Everybody. Welcome to the CORFAC Virtual Spring Conference Best Practices Session. I'm Howard Greenberg, President of Howard Properties Ltd, CORFAC International in Valhalla, New York. My pleasure to moderate this panel today on a subject that is really near and dear to my heart. And on today's subject, exclusive representation and business development strategies, how it helps. Before we start, I would like to thank our session sponsor, AEI Consultants. Karen Hurd from AEI is joining us this morning. And Karen, would you like to say a few words before we start?
Sure. Thank you so much, Howard. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here today for CORFAC Spring Virtual Conference. My name's Karen Hurd. Howard just said I'm based up here in Boston, Massachusetts, where it's sunny outside. The temperatures are in the low 60s. I appreciate the opportunity to be your sponsor. For those of you that aren't familiar with AEI, AEI Consultants is an environmental property consulting firm based in the Bay Area with 25 offices nationally that has served clients for over 30 years. And I would share with you that our clients say that we're reliable, resourceful, and responsive, which pretty much represents a little bit about who I am. When I was thinking about the few words that I would share with you today, I was reading through your panelist description, and they're going to be talking today about how to really succeed in commercial real estate and exclusive representation as a best practice for you. You know, so everybody wants to earn more money, work more efficiently, or raise your visibility in your market and be a differentiator in your market. And I just want to share with everybody on the call today that I can appreciate all of those key points. And I'm excited also to learn from your panelists today too, because I've sat in your seats and I understand your business. I understand the timeframes, the sensitivity of deals, and the importance of bringing quick answers and solutions to a deal, being a go-to trusted advisor because you have built a solid relationship with your clients. I have met many CORFAC professionals and advisors throughout the years. I know who your sponsors have been. I know them personally, having been on the national conference circuit for over 10 years and about 20 years in commercial real estate. Prior to AEI, just so you know, I was part of the management and leadership team with SVN International Corp, where I traveled nationally and helped expand, which they now have over 200 offices and 1,600 advisors nationally. So I've consulted with a lot of principals and firms like yours and opened offices for SVN across the country. And before that, I was part of the investment sales team with Grubb & Ellis, which some of you may recall, which is now known as Newmark Knight Frank here out of the Boston office. I am a CCIM. I currently serve as the immediate past president of the New England CCIM chapter. I also serve on the board of Crew Network's Boston chapter. So I can be a good resource if anybody needs a connection or anything in Greater Boston. So today, I appreciate the opportunity to connect. And when you think about how to be a differentiator in your market as you listen to the panelists, I hope you'll also think of me. I can help you be a differentiator in your business by being an extension of your business. So consider me a unique resource as you consider yourselves a unique resource to your clients. You know, given the fact that I have been a broker and I have been with a national brokerage firm. Clients do business with me because they like me, they know me, they trust me, I'm responsive, and I can provide you immediate access to technical expertise if it is related to environmental, property due diligence. I work with all types of investors, developers, and again, I'm here to be a resource to help you provide the best services to your clients in your markets. So thank you so much and have a great day, everybody.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you. I was going to, one second, Howard. I was going to kind of throw a little bit about your bio out, Karen. We're really excited to have you as a sponsor. You know, Karen and I have been speaking, as she mentioned, on the circuit, on the conference circuit for quite some time. And, you know, she was kind of representing, you know, a competitor for a long period of time. So you covered everything, but I wanted to also mention that Karen is a CCIM. She's been a practitioner. So, you know, she has, she knows she's been in our seat, so she'll be a really good resource for you guys. That's all I had to say, Howard. I'm sorry to interrupt you. Stage is yours.
Not at all, Joe. Thanks very much.
Joe.
I've been a member of CORFAC since I think 1999. I formed my shop in 1998, and somehow or other, I cannot remember how, I had met a gentleman named Mike Jacobus, who was one of the founders of CORFAC. And simultaneously with opening up my new shop, I had a national account. Except there was only one problem. I had never done any business outside of Westchester County, New York, and had no idea how to do it. But I kept giving Mike a call and say, Mike, I need a broker in San Diego. And he'd recommend somebody. Need a broker in Nashville, need a broker in Columbus, whatever it was. And finally he said, hey, why don't you come into CORFAC, because you're giving out so much outbound business that we'd like to have you as a member. And that's how I got involved. So my total experience in the business is 35 years, with now almost 23 on my own. Notwithstanding being a one-man shop, I've won the largest deal in CORFAC and the largest R&D deal. And my practice is almost 100% tenant representation. So I chose the title for this session, which is how to be a successful broker without customers. And that's really the way I feel. I don't have customers, I have clients. And to me, that distinction is a client is a signed exclusive, someone who's bound to me. I'm their retained real estate consultant. And we're going to talk about what that means today and what it means to everybody's business. So let me introduce our panelists. First, Ed Del Beccaro, Executive Vice President in Bay Area for TRI Commercial. Ed, would you give us a little bio?
Yes. Thank you, Howard and Karen. Your AEI office is 2 miles from my office. And over the last 20 years, I must have used it 20 times for property inspection reports. So very good firm. So I've been doing real estate commercial brokerage and or development and or property management for the last 40 years. Been with TRI for over 2.5 years now, and therefore a member of CORFAC. I'm proud to be a member of CORFAC. I do medical office leasing. I'm doing some multifamily land deals since I used to build houses. And we have about 100 agents and 7 offices. In the Bay Area, we have Oakland, Walnut Creek, San Francisco, and Silicon Valley. So, and we also do property management.
Okay. And next is Noel Liston, who's a principal with Darwin Realty, CORFAC International, Chicago. Noel, would you give us a quick overview?
Sure, and thank you, Howard and Karen and Ed, for the introduction. Happy to be here. Hello to CORFAC Nation. Darwin Realty is relatively new to CORFAC. We're about 2 years in. We are an industrial specialist founded in 1972 by my partner and managing broker, George Sabula. I've been here for 26 years, so my entire career, focusing on anything from landlord representation, tenant representation, build-to-suits, design builds, land sales, anything to do with industrial, we've done it. I've run the company, I've run our sales department, but I've always been a broker, and now I'm happiest back being a broker, working with young associates who are coming into the industry. So it's a topic that's near and dear to me as I work with our young brokers here at Darwin. Thank you.
Thank you. Jen, is it possible to mute everyone? I'm hearing some feedback from someplace. Okay.
Yeah, we're looking into that, Howard. Thank you.
Okay. And last but not least, Scott Hensley, principal with Piedmont Properties of the Carolinas, CORFAC International. Scott?
Thanks, Howard. So Piedmont's actually been a CORFAC member for probably going on 21, 22 years. Firm's been around since I think we're celebrating 26 years. We do cover all the major food groups and primarily in North Carolina and Charlotte, but we do reach down into South Carolina. My book of business is pretty much all industrial, and we do both tenant rep and landlord rep. So we kind of speak to it from both sides of the coin. Thanks, Howard.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to give a little bit of my thoughts on exclusive representation, and I think we're going to have an interesting back and forth because certainly Noel and Scott, the guys who are more industrial, are going to have a different feeling about it. And I learned the other day they've got different state requirements than we have in New York. So we're going to learn about that also. But basically, particularly as a one-man shop, I've really learned that I've got to be careful with my time. I've got to make sure that I finish deals that I start. Don't want to be one of those guys that starts 10 deals and finishes one. It's not a good way for me to make a living. And literally over 95% of my business is written exclusive representation agreements. They bind me to the tenant. They bind the tenant to me. He or she is my exclusive client. They protect me. The exclusive rep agreements protect me against my competitors, because my agreement basically says anybody sends you a flyer, anybody calls you up about a property, your answer is I'll forward it to Howard, and Howard will evaluate it and see if it's something that I should see. It protects me on getting paid for the work that I do. And I literally will not punch the button to start a CoStar survey unless I've got a fully executed exclusive rep agreement. I'm not being arrogant about it, but it's just kind of the way I operate. I really feel that I've earned my money when I get that exclusive rep agreement signed. The future payment date is undetermined, but I know that I am locked in for that transaction, in many cases, future transactions. So I'm their guy. When somebody says, what does it mean to have an exclusive representative? I said, it basically means I'm your guy. Anything that comes across your desk that you think might be interesting, send it to me. I'll evaluate it. I'll let you know. Before I put you in a car and take you to a building, I'm going to look at it. I'm going to see if it fits your unique needs. I am not going to waste your time until I need a decision or need information, and then I will certainly call you. So I've got the incentive to work for them, so that, because I know that I'm locked into the transaction, and frankly, they have the incentive to bring me into their inner circle. I don't get brokered by my tenants. They don't say, hey, I got to have a $10 deal, okay, just because they'd like to get a cheap rent. But they will say, you know, I really do need all my free rent up front because I'm working on an acquisition or whatever it may be. And that's important to me. And Howard, can you please try and get that into the discussion? And then when a landlord asks me, well, why does he need all the free rent up front? I've got an answer for him, as opposed to another broker who's just, you know, working with a customer who might say, I don't know, that's what the tenant told me. And I don't think that's going to get a very favorable response from the landlord. I know that I provide valuable services to tenants. They don't know what they don't know. They don't understand real estate negotiation. They don't understand the process. They don't understand market vacancy, both in the market and in their landlord's portfolio. They don't understand that people like me with knowledge of the market and relationships in the market can save them money. They don't know that landlords would rather deal, in many cases, I'm not talking about the mom and pop so much, but landlords, the larger ones in many cases, would rather deal with an exclusive rep or a broker that knows the process and frankly can manage his client. An exclusive rep is going to manage his client better than one broker working among 2 or 3 brokers for with the same customer. And they don't know that somewhere, somehow, everybody's paying a commission on a transaction, even if they're paying it to a landlord's in-house team. So that concept of is, gee, that commission is going to be layered onto my rent is not a realistic concept. They also don't know that by saying to the landlord, okay, I'll pay you another 50 cents and you can renew my lease for another 5 years, they're leaving a lot of money on the table. They don't know the leverage that they have by hiring me. And if I can convey this to them properly, I'll get that exclusive rep agreement. And by the way, it's not easy to convey, because it's very easy to give away our value, because you don't want to say to the tenant, okay, Mr. Tenant, you want to do a 5-year deal. We're going to ask for 7 years with 6 months of free rent, and we're going to want to roll the rent back $2 and whatever. If they just take notes or have a decent memory, they don't need me. So it's a very interesting sales process of conveying what you know, but not giving it all away to that prospect. If the prospect says, I really don't want to move, why do I need you? The answer is very simple, and I've said it many times. I just finished X deals with your landlord, 2 deals, 3 deals, 4 deals, whatever it may be. I've got more leverage with that landlord. They depend on me to bring them business. I've got more leverage than you do with them. I know what their thinking process is. I know how we can get the best terms and conditions for you, which is of course what it says in the exclusive rep agreement. So these comments relate to my market. They relate probably more to office than they do to industrial. And we're going to talk about that with Noel and Scott. But I want to get into a freewheeling conversation here with the panelists. So, Scott, just for what do you feel exclusive representation is? Because you're coming from a little bit different product type, and by the way, a little bit different legal requirement, realtor's requirement in your state, which you can expand on. Just to explain a little bit too, in couching your comments.
Yes, I'll start off with that because it helps me pitch the exclusive rep. So in North Carolina, you cannot be a transactional broker. What I mean by that is you have to be on one side or the other of the transaction. I know every state's not like that. And the reason it benefits me in North Carolina is if I get some pushback from a prospect, future client about signing exclusive, I can simply say it is the North Carolina Real Estate Commission requirement that you have to have a represent, or I have to represent somebody. If I'm not representing you, then I'm going to be representing the landlord on the other side. And it also kind of helps you disqualify maybe some of the other brokers out there that will work without an exclusive, because you can say, well, are they really working for you if they haven't signed an exclusive? Who are they working for? The other thing I would say, I think some of this session is about, what tools have we used? What have we used when we're pitching business? And I think the other thing is as I was going through, listen to Howard, that, it is about saving time and money for the client. It's not what they do day in and day out. It is about market knowledge. As we practitioners know, the incentives potentially change daily, weekly, monthly, whatever it is, and that we keep up with that. So that's the value. And I would say the other thing that I pitched to folks is that, finding, whether it's on the buyer or the tenant side, sometimes finding the location, they think that is the most important, the easiest, or the most difficult thing. It usually isn't, as we know. It's getting the deal to the finish line. And what I preach everyone is, let me use my 26 years of experience, and not only experience, but my relationships and the team I have. Again, if it's on the sale, especially on the industrial, it's going to be having to get through the environmental, the survey, you name all the obstacles. Well, I've already vetted those service providers. Let me bring my team to the table, and I promise you, I will save you more time and effort and probably money than if you try to do it on your own. So I think for all of us, depending upon what sandbox you play in, what is it that's going to appeal to that client? Because if given a choice, that customer, that prospect would rather not sign an exclusive. Probably they'd rather, in their mind, have 10 brokers out there running around trying to present things to them. So we've got to get it across to them is, why is it beneficial for you to hitch your wagon to me and let me exclusively represent you? So that's kind of my commentary. I'll pass it on to Ed.
Thank you. I just want to interject one thing, because Scott brought up an interesting point. And for those people who have for those tenants rather, who have a difficult or a very narrowly based requirement, my response to, gee, I'd rather work with, a bunch of different brokers and have people, scratch and claw at each other to give me the best deal. I say, you know what, when it's everybody's responsibility to find you a space or execute a renewal, it's nobody's responsibility. And when you sign me on as your exclusive rep, I take that responsibility. I've got to work hard to satisfy your real estate requirement and get that deal over the finish line. So I'm taking some of that burden off the tenant. Ed Del Beccaro, you work in a lot of different product types. How do you kind of handicap the exclusive rep among those? You're also muted, Ed.
So I primarily do office and medical and some industrial, but for my tenant rep, it's mostly office medical. And so a couple thoughts. First of all, license requirements in California, which are maybe a little different from elsewhere. You're allowed to represent both sides, but we have a dual agency disclosure requirement from the state of California Department of Real Estate. And dual agency, then we actually have forms and we actually put it in our letter of intent. You have to inform the other side if you're representing the landlord or that. If there is no other broker, you're automatically a dual agent, even if they're represented by an attorney. And even if the same firm, let's say the firm TRI has the landlord listing, then another TRI broker from another city has the tenant rep, we are a dual agency. Dual agency in California does not mean you represent the business interests of both sides. Dual agency means you disclose it and you have to tell all material facts to either side. So whether the building has issues, physical issues, tenant had a bankruptcy, but only those. Business interests you do not have to disclose, or business plans. Reasons for tenant rep. I have probably done 60% of my business is representing a tenant. I actually get inserted or referred for most of my deals because of my reputation for how I do tenant rep. And again, I agree with Howard and Scott so far as to why you want it in writing. A couple of facts, by the way. So I've represented a lot of banks, hospitals, and other doctors. And here's, if you want to know your time value of money. So Howard said customer versus client. Customer comes in the store, one-time use. Client, repeat business. So I have at least 10 clients. I've done 40 deals a piece, sometimes in other parts of the country. Here is the, somebody once quantified the cost. So every time you solicit a new representation or a new listing, you probably spend $4,000 to $6,000 in marketing cost or overhead to get it. But if you do repeat business with the same client, it's roughly $1,500 or 1/4. So therefore, if you do 10 deals with the client, first of all, you've trained each other, you do expectations. Couple remaining thoughts. One reason why I'm successful in exclusive tenant representation is I become the client. What does that mean? So I thoroughly research the client. I thoroughly ask a lot of questions. By the way, people judge you by your interview questions. So I become the client. I've ascertained their business plan, and the purpose of the business plan is to accomplish the goal of the client, not just find a space. So how does the, Scott referenced this, how does the building affect their business plan? In retail, that's all powerful. You know, the wrong building could become too much overhead. Have you reviewed the operating cost and all the other things from a tenant rep side? So I teach and practice becoming the client. I also, the last thing is, you want the reputation of exclusive. So then clients, when you get referred by lawyers and bankers or CPAs, they know what you stand for. So I have some other thoughts later on, Howard.
Okay, thank you. Noel, your thoughts on exclusive rep, particularly coming from an industrial product type in Chicago?
Yeah, thanks, Howard. So we teach our young brokers, exclusivity is everything. It'll define your relationship moving forward with whatever potential opportunity you are looking at and assessing. So whether you have that exclusive or you don't is going to direct how you're going to act and what type of time, efforts, and risks that you're willing to take on any given transaction. We are fairly mixed between non-exclusive and exclusive work. We couldn't survive, I think, in Chicago without exclusivity, and we couldn't survive by not doing transactions with customers or one-time transactions. So we're pretty diverse. But the first thing that we want to think about is exclusivity. Am I going to get there or not, right? And so that's a very individual assessment that everyone needs to make. But that has to be first and foremost on your mind, because it's going to determine both legally and ethically what your obligations are and services and duties are to the individual or corporation that you're going to be working with or representing. So many good reasons were given for exclusivity. You know, Howard has, and we could probably sit here all day and go back and forth, but you know, a lot of the basics have been covered. You're going to save time and money. I'll often tell them, look, if you were going to see a medical professional for a virus, you may get a second opinion, but you're not going to work with 3 medical professionals to provide your cure. You know, eventually you have to pick one. The same with an attorney or an accountant. You know, we're a professional services firm, and eventually, you know, you should pick one. Now, everyone doesn't want to pick somebody. They could be entrepreneurs. They could be a growing company. They could have been burned in the past by a poor exclusive relationship. And so these are the things that we have to be prepared for and be able to object. But at the end of the day, ultimately, you have to make the determination, how much time and effort am I going to put in here based on the potential rewards if there's not going to be an exclusive. And for many good reasons, some people just won't execute them. And that's okay. But you then again have to, and your team have to decide, how are you going to approach this assignment? Some of the largest transactions that I've completed from an industrial standpoint, I did the investment transaction of the year for Chicago in 2015, which was about a $60 million sale of a 4-building portfolio of industrial facilities. Well, I certainly didn't have an exclusive. I made some phone calls and I asked the right questions. So would I encourage our young brokers to work without an exclusive? No, that's always the objective. First and foremost, we want to demonstrate, the value that we bring, but you need to be prepared to pivot and, and do the best with what's in front of you. And so we do both, and, certainly could talk further on both sides of the coin. Thank you.
Right. I think in fairness, I feel that office tenants are more predisposed to listen to an exclusive rep pitch and to respond positively to an exclusive rep pitch than industrial tenants are rather. And certainly I think when a market gets very hot, like in industrial, people get a little bit desperate, if you will, and they'll go out with anyone that they think might be able to find them a solution. So that's part of the reason I wanted to have Scott and Noel on this panel, to give a little balance to some of the stuff that Ed and I are talking about.
Howard, can I weigh in for a minute on what Noel was just talking about?
Sure.
So again, kind of going back to our approach, and probably more so the industrial, and Howard, I agree. I think that it's less common on industrial to have the exclusive rep. And so my approach usually is always want to get it in place. And you sense whether or not there's going to be a pushback. So I always have the conversation initially. And depending upon what kind of reading I get from the client, I almost always send them the exclusive. So I prepared them going, hey, at some point in this transaction, if we work together, we will have to boil this down to and put it in writing. I'm going to send it to you. I like for you to review it and sign it. And if they push back, and I'd still get a sense that, hey, this may be a client that I think can be loyal, then I'll say, you know what, let's move forward with a gentleman's agreement, start providing some value, but then quickly, hopefully getting that signed agreement. So kind of like what Noel said, that sometimes you do have to create some trust and goodwill with the client before they just sign off on a document that commits them to, working with you for the next 6 months. So that's been successful for me, is kind of taking that first step, at least send it to them so they're aware that at some point we're going to put this in writing. The other thing, again, talking about when clients push back on signing it, I will almost tell you that all of our clients work with contracts in their business. Rarely do they have their employees go out there and start working for free. So, if they push back really hard, I'm saying, do you operate your business without written contracts? The answer is probably no. Well, then I shouldn't have to operate my business without a written contract. So
right.
I think if you deliver that correctly, it's well received.
Right.
Thank you.
I've signed many exclusive rep agreements in my time, and it's 2 pages, and most people don't even look at it, honestly, because if I've done my job right, they know what I'm going to do. So that's one thing. But one thing we haven't discussed is it gives me a right, and one of the largest deals that I've ever done, and started a great relationship with a client who CORFAC ultimately benefited from as well, was me being able to say no to that client. And it worked out that we were working in a certain area of Connecticut looking for a co-location data center. And for those of you who know a little bit about that, you've got to have a lot of infrastructure, redundant power, redundant fiber, above the 100-year floodplain, a whole bunch of very limiting factors. And I had an exclusive rep with this client. Forget about the fact I didn't know a data center from a shopping center. That's irrelevant. But I called up the client one day and I said, I got a building for you. And he said, where is it? And I told him where it was, because it was not in the area that we looked at originally. And he says, I'm not going there. I said, yes, you are. You're going to waste an hour with me. And if you don't like it, that's fine. But I've inspected this building. I know your requirements now. I think this is the building for you. And of course, everybody knows the end of the story. He walked through the building, he walked out, he says, wow, I can save 5, 6, 7, $10 million by going to this building because it's got all the infrastructure that I need. And we did a 71,000 foot 10-year deal, and that was only the beginning. So I would not have had that juice, if you will, as a broker, but I certainly had that juice as an exclusive rep. So
Howard, if I could just piggyback on what you had said, Howard
Sure.
brings up a great point. When you're evaluating the exclusive relationship, one of the most important things I think for young brokers to understand is the complexity of the transaction ahead of you. And so the more complex the transaction is, the more likely you're going to need the exclusive representation in writing,
Right.
per your managing broker's documentation, per the state's requirements, so that you can spend the appropriate time. And I think it's important to convey that to our clients or the opportunities. When we do build-to-suits in Chicago, I won't do one without an exclusive representation because I know the time, effort, pain, and tears that come through that process for a year or more. And so I think that's a great point. Howard's specific transaction was complex as it was a data center. Conversely, we're still going to push the warehouser that's just looking to lease 30 to 50,000 square feet. We're going to push for that exclusive. If he does not want, or she does not want, or they don't want to provide that exclusivity, that's okay. Then it becomes a calculated decision on our part on how we're going to move forward. And lastly, certainly exclusivity should be talked about, if at all possible, pandemic period excluded, in person. And
Right.
so I've always have with me, and our young brokers, I make sure that they have our exclusive agreement with them filled out in advance of the meeting. And then when the opportunity, if the opportunity presents itself, you present it. Worst case, you want to leave it with them in person, and you're going to look at them. And if they're going to sign it, then you just be quiet and let them sign it. If they're not going to sign it, you say, well, I'm going to leave this with you. I would like to get past this so that I can, start working on this project, Mr. Prospect. I'm very excited. I'm going to utilize all our resources, but we do need to get that out of the way.
Right.
And meeting's over and you follow up, you may or may not get it, but you got to put your best effort forward to obtain it, because it is always best when you have exclusivity. You're going to get paid, and that's, one of the most important things in our business.
Yep. I've gotten exclusive rep agreements signed on a single cold call. I've certainly gotten them signed on referrals, and others, it's taken me weeks or months to pitch that client. But as part of that pitch process, I get comfortable with them and they get comfortable with me. And then, by the time they're done, by the time I'm done pitching and they get comfortable, we get a rep agreement signed between us. Jen, could we go to the next slide, or Christy?
Yeah. So
Thank you.
Howard,
Yes.
I was going to, echo the other comments, but one way that I actually, prior to even presenting the exclusive, how do I get exclusive tenant reps? So again, I changed the mindset of the broker to become an advisor, a consultant. Right. So a consultant advisor broker versus a transaction mentality broker thinks in terms of what the client needs and presents options, scenarios, and understands what they're trying to do. So again, I will send or ask questions about their business, interview questions, so that what is their business plan? What are they trying to accomplish? Are they subject to general accounting principles? For most brokers, you might not know this. If you're subject to GAAP rules, you can't take free rent up front. You have to actually charge the effective rent over the lease term. How does depreciation work if they own the tenant improvements? How does it impact their bottom line? So when I ask these questions, they think of me more than a broker. That's my title, by the way. I'm more than just a broker. So that then I can give them consultation and scenario analysis. And then by doing that, then there's a value add. And so then I present the value add as to why I will help their bottom line, why I will accomplish their goals, and why real estate won't hurt their goals in terms of their business plan. So I work on that. And in fact, about a third of my tenant rep agreements, I actually get a consulting fee up front. So again, I'm trying to compete with the mindset of an attorney, a CPA, consultant, architect, AEI, for instance. So I said, this can be a credit because they want me to do homework or they want me to do something. Said, I'll research your lease. I'll do this, but why don't we have a minimal fee of $1,000 or $5,000? And I get it. And that could be accredited against the commission. When they pay you, it's a different mindset. When they pay you, they respect you more. Now, on the other hand, the broker has an obligation to earn that. You have to be expert. You just can't wing it. You just can't be a messenger, as other people have mentioned. So again, how do you become a specialist in the field that they are, and then you earn their respect?
Right. And when I ask the kind of questions that Ed is asking, when I say to someone, what are your space needs? They say, well, I need 10 offices and 15 cubes. I say, no, no, no. What's happening in your business? We're going to be doing a 7 to 10 year lease. What do you envision happening in your business? Certainly this has been upended by the pandemic, but you know, are you going to acquire companies? Might you divest companies? How might things change so that we can prepare for them? Can we get some options to expand? Can we get options to shrink? Really take it as from a business mindset, just not from a square foot mindset. We also have a question from David Boyd, which I've been asked many times before. What is the term of your agreement, and does it specify a requirement or a specific project? The term of my agreement is always the last day of the client's present lease. So if I'm talking to him 3 years ahead, I want to be locked into the last day of his lease. I see Ed's eyebrows going up, okay? But that's what I do. Obviously, they got to be out of there by that day. We got to make our deal a long time before, but that's the benchmark that I need. And typically, yeah, they relate to a specific project. I try and make them as broad as possible. But yeah, typically they try and relate to a certain county or a certain project, something like that.
Hey, Howard, I would just add, I believe this is going to be a local licensing requirement, because I know in Illinois, contracts for exclusive representation, whether it be the sale of a building or a tenant rep assignment, they're only valid for a year. And so then they have to be renewed. They can be automatically renewed if you structure it as such in your contract. But for us, it's a year, which brings the challenges to opportunities, as Howard mentioned, that are 3 years out.
Right.
And so then we have to weigh, where am I at in this cycle 2 years in advance? Am I just simply too early to press it? How do I leave it? Do I get it in writing? Do I want to be the exclusive 3 years out and then not get renewed and have another firm come in and complete transactions? So I would just, advise that, you're aware of local license law when you contemplate the timing for your contracts.
Yeah. Obviously, New York licensing law is a lot less stringent than Illinois licensing law. And I saw Ed put up, his term is generally 6 months with a right to terminate. I always try for a minimum of a year. If someone
I also set up to a year. I also
try you out. And my response to that is, well, fine, but you have to give me a right to fail, because you can't do what we need to do. You can't accomplish the process in 3 months or 6 months. And I said, look, I will give you, if I'm not doing my job, which of course is specified in my agreement, you can fire me. But if you decide you don't like guys with mustaches and I'm doing my job, I don't want to be fired. So I try and get a full enough term on that agreement to make it work.
You wouldn't shave it for the deal, Howard?
I'm sorry, Joe?
You wouldn't shave it for the deal?
Do I want to save it for the deal?
Shave it.
Why would you shave it from the deal?
Shave it for the deal. Come on. Whatever it takes, right?
So I once shaved my mustache and my wife said, I'm going to divorce you, grow it back.
Yeah, my wife wouldn't recognize me without a mustache. Neither would my kids. There's a note on here about blend and extend lease renewals, which actually I guess fits quite well in here, because I happen to be working with 2 clients right now on 2 pretty substantial deals that we're out in the market, or certainly talking about them, approximately 2.5 years before the lease is up. I think most of us would agree that, except for industrial, the office market is certainly in kind of a trough. And if you've got a tenant of size who knows that their business is solid and they want to do an early renewal, it's a great opportunity for blend and extends. Needless to say, you really need that agreement signed before you're going to that tenant's landlord and say, hey, I want to talk to you about XYZ, doing a blend and extend that's 2.5 years out, and get them a whole bunch of benefits, which is very, very possible in this marketplace. Do we have the next slide, Jen? Or Christy, I'm sorry. Okay. I think there's been some discussion about how we lever exclusive rep into future business. And there's no question that when you become part of this inner circle with your clients, that they're just going to be, your phone's on their speed dial when they need something else. It should be on their speed dial. If you've done your job, it should be on their speed dial. And I'm sitting with a client, my office is with a client that I've done probably 300,000 or 400,000 feet of deals with between New York and California. And it's just the best way to go. You know, when you get a call and you just go to your pipeline and you put a new requirement in that you didn't have to pitch, and you didn't have to work hard to get, that's really a nice, absolutely a nice thing to have. Yes.
Along those lines, Howard, this is Ed.
Yes.
So one way, so let's imagine you're going after a large tenant rep and you don't have a strong relationship yet. So how do you get that? Every good large tenant usually already is represented by a broker. So how do you break into that circle knowing that they have active needs? So one of the things that I do is I'll call up the tenant, interview them, and I interview maybe the CFO, the assistant CFO, COO, whatever the case, facilities. And then, so let's imagine that they have a large Walnut Creek East Bay requirement. I will also ask them, what are you doing in Fresno? What are you doing in your Seattle office? Do you need a market report? So I use the oblique attack. So then they think of you as a regional national broker versus just a local yokel. And so then I actually send reports. I understand you're expanding your LA office, or you're expanding your Las Vegas office. Here's some information. And by the way, we can help you there. And so then they think of you as having more resources, not just a local. And so that's one way that I then leverage into additional business.
Right. Absolutely.
Howard, I was going to weigh in, and Ed said it so much better than I was going to. So thank you, Ed. But I think part of it is we have to educate our clients that we are more than just San Francisco. We are more than just Charlotte. And I don't care how good a relationship you have with somebody, don't ever assume that they think you've got reach beyond that local market, because they don't know that unless you tell them that and educate them. So I know in CORFAC, we used to always use the term, ask the question. Ask a question, where else do you have business? I always ask, where else do you have problems? Where else do you have issues? How else can I solve an issue for you? And, probably 7 out of 10 times, somebody say, I got a problem down in Florida, whatever it is, it leads to something, but it is on us. Don't assume your client knows your breadth of coverage. You got to tell them. So, but Ed said it much better than I did, and a whole lot better way of going about it.
Right. And don't assume also that when your deal is done, it's done. Because, for instance, I finished a deal in, I think, very late 2018 with a client. And by 2019, we were already talking about doubling his space. So, again, this leads to a tail. And it being an exclusive rep and being known as someone who is typically an exclusive rep in the marketplace enhances a broker's position in many ways. It certainly enhances it with his client, because you are his retained real estate person. You're his out of house real estate department, so to speak. And you're going to be the guy that's going to call him up, to Ed's point, and say, hey, your lease in Fresno is coming up in 3 years. Have we got a strategy yet? Or are you thinking about a strategy for the next thing? Hey, I heard the tenant, the space next door to you came open in your local building. Any needs that you might have, or whatever it may be. All of these things are important. It enhances your reputation with your local brokers, because they're going to say, hey, how did you get that exclusive? That's great. Control is a wonderful word. Control means you can get to that client anytime you want to and ask the questions and get information and send them news that they will read and so on, that may enhance your ability to get new business from that client, and certainly on a regional or national basis. And I find that it really enhances my position with landlords. I mean, look, we all have landlords that get it, and we all have landlords that don't get it. And the landlords that get it are the people that are really paying our salary. And you know, the landlord will call me up and say, "Hey, I got a call from your client. You know, he thinks he wants to expand. Give him a call." And you know, that's worth a lot of money. It's not that the client was going around me. He just didn't, you know, just wanted to chat and made a call and whatever. I get the call from the landlord. Okay, now let's start to work on this. And it really does help. And I see another question comes up. When you hit the roadblock of the business owner stating they have a broker that they work with often, what is a good strategy to keep the conversation going? You know, I had that come up with an exclusive that I pitched, and he was working with a broker. He had been for 2 years. The broker had come up empty. So one answer, of course, is it's time for a fresh look at things, which he responded to. And the other part of what he said was, you know, I've been working with a few different brokers and so on. And I said, you know what, especially this happened to be a quasi industrial requirement. It was a high-tech manufacturing requirement. And I said that, you know what, no offense, but industrial brokers are typically building centric. I'm client centric. I'm not going to throw a building at you because it's out there. I've got to know that that fits your requirements. And somehow it resonated. Took me a few weeks to get it, but I got the exclusive, and that was the deal that we did. I'm sorry, Ed, I just saw you come up with something here too. Appoint yourself their preferred second broker and send industry information. Yeah. Yeah.
So what I do with every large tenant, it'll be unusual if they didn't have a broker. So you start with that premise. So how do you earn business over time? First of all, I appoint myself and I tell them, I'm your second preferred broker, if that's okay. And here's what I'm going to do for you. So I actually send them information on their competitors. So-and-so bank took additional space across town or near them, or somebody, or even on their own business. You can set up Google so that you get news briefs on preferred clients. And then it's amazing what they don't hear that goes in the various trades or the newspapers. So we call it the touch systems. So 6 times a year, sometimes 12, you send a piece of information to that client relative to their business, relative to their client base, relative to their competition. And then you interview and penetrate what I call various levels of the authority. So you make friends with the facilities director. You help the CO, CFO, because anytime there's a change in leadership, they usually fire the broker. Because the good brokers don't, some brokers don't lobby enough
Keep up
vertically with the rest of the org chart. So that's what I do.
Right. No, look, we're not all going to get this on the first shot. To younger brokers, if you're not comfortable in making these kinds of pitches, I would drag somebody with gray hair from your office into the pitch who can help you secure this. And even if you have to work as a team, and even if you have to give away part of your commission, I think it's worth it to again bind yourself to the client and get this this promotion, if you will, to exclusive rep from broker.
Howard, I've got a question for the panel. Unless you can I ask a question of the panel here? It kind of goes back to what Ed said. What do you do, Howard? For instance, you sign a 7-year lease, and as you said, it very well likely be another transaction for that 7 years. Is it once a year you're sending an email? I mean, what is your process for staying top of mind in front of those clients for that repeat business?
Well, I certainly take a page from Ed's book. I send them, you know, things that would be relevant. Of course, I'm calling them. I'm dropping in the days before the pandemic, when you could, you know, just drive around and drop in and talk to people. It was certainly a lot easier than it is today. But always keep in front of that tenant. And look, the particular client that I referred to, that I've I've got nationally, one of them that I've got nationally. I did a small deal with him to start on a referral. We did a 7-year deal, and 3 years later, he called me up and we did a deal 7 times that size, and we subleased the original space, and it just kept growing from there. So you never know when something's going to change in their business. And just because they do a 5 or 7 or 10-year lease doesn't mean that it's going to take that long for a change to occur in their business. So if you keep in front of them and you keep top of mind, if something's happening, hopefully they're going to give you a call. I think it was David Boyd. How do I handle project management and construction management services? I don't. Basically, in my market, in office, landlords build out the space. If the tenant is going to build out the space for some reason, I will certainly recommend construction companies that I know that, you know, that I'm comfortable with, architects, things of that nature. This is another one, Ed, another good one. You know, you can always call your tenants and see if they've got their operating cost increases, and can you help them review that. And again, you know, you gotta keep on top of the market. If the market is soft, obviously tenants are going to be more in favor of doing blend and extends, early renewals, things of that nature. If the markets are firm and rents are going up and so on, if that tenant has got extra needs, they certainly require additional expertise, because they just can't call up and rent the space that's been vacant next to them for 3 years because it's not vacant anymore. So you've got to, I've made a lot of money dealing with tenants in large portfolios that need to shrink or need to expand. And we, you know, tear up the original lease and move them someplace else in the portfolio. Landlord is winning by getting an expanded tenant and a extended lease term. And the tenant's winning because he's not stuck in a space that no longer fits his needs.
So Howard, going back to David Boyd's question.
Yep.
For certain large tenants, if you're competing with the big firms, JLL, CBRE, they do offer one-shop services. So you have to be conscious that CB will say, we will do your project management, your construction management, your move management, etc. So in our case, we're a smaller firm. We're actually moving into project management, construction management over time. But I have alliance partners, and we co-market. We refer back and forth. Sometimes one part of the equation is not used, but it's very important to have the ability, as David is suggesting, that you can do one-stop shopping and help them at a minimum with having an internal project manager or having construction management services. How does that work in industrial? I'd be curious. Noel.
Sorry. Yeah, and I would say it's similar, right? And we just like to say these are arrows in our quiver, okay? So I've got 3 environmental firms, I've got 3 design build firms, I've got 3 accountants, I've got 3 real estate attorneys, and I need to maintain those relationships and work those relationships so that I can bring them to the forefront when there's a project. You know, from our perspective and my perspective, personally, I like control. So all messaging and communication is going to come through me. But as we sit down and we hear that CBRE or JLL is going to do this, this, and this for us, what are you going to do for us? Well, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm not obligated to use in-house services that are probably disproportionately higher fee-based in the end than what the open market is going to bring you when I bring you 3 competitive bids from an architect, an engineer, a civil engineer, an environmental firm. So, you know, great discussion on the project management design build front. It does start with exclusivity and it ends with exclusivity. If you have it, if you give me your exclusive, you have access to, you know, 47 years of Darwin and our resources here in this metro market, and all of these professional services that we've come to build relationships with over the years by working with the best in service from these trades, these industries.
Right. And by the way, Ed, to your point, when, you know, people talk about the big firms, because I do pitch against them all the time. And my pitch is that, hey, you've got my entire company working for you. I'm going to do everything that needs to be done on this project. There are no juniors in my firm. Nothing's going to get passed down. It's all going to be me. It's my relationships. It's my expertise. It's my knowledge. It's my market knowledge, et cetera, all of which I'm bringing to bear on your particular assignment. So does anyone else have any other questions? I think it's been a great discussion. Okay. So
If we have time, I've got a question for Ed. Ed, you mentioned about fee-based, almost like a retainer. How do you typically structure that? Is it like, a monthly retainer to be credited against future, or any commentary would be appreciated? You're on mute, by the way, Ed.
Good question. It depends upon the requirement. If it's just a one-time requirement, I probably don't get it for that. Where I get it for, if they ask me to, can we restructure our lease because we need some COVID or interim cash flow abatement, we'll do a blend and extend. Then I ask for a retainer up front, and I might charge 5% or 10% of the commission. On other things, they'll ask me, the new phrase that I'm running into is called right-sizing your portfolio. So what clients with 10 to 20 to 40 spaces, CFO will just say, cut your space costs, everybody, 5%, 10%. Remember, space is the last thing on the bottom line, except for certain retailers. Space is a cost, not a positive. It doesn't do anything to make wiggets. So then if I am going to review 5 or 7 of their transactions, that's a definite consulting fee. It might not even result in a deal in the next 6 months, but I recommend, hey, did you consider, I interview them, did you consider doing your Riverside and LA office together and consolidating? Where does your workforce live? And then you can then make decisions based on that. I saw Joe has a question.
Yeah, actually, it's more of a statement. You just kind of listen to how you guys talk and put everything together. I've always been big, being in a tertiary market. When I go into pitches against the JLLs and the CBREs and the Grubb Ellisons of the world, I've always come in as CORFAC to make myself appear, not appear, I am. I'm larger than, I'm equal with you guys. I'm on the same playing field as you guys. Don't discount the advantage you have by saying we also have these services, but we have the independent part of that. Like you guys, had already mentioned. That's great. You don't have to use CBRE construction. Here's 3 construction firms. You can get your best number, but you're still getting the benefit of a national firm in CORFAC International.
Yep.
Awesome to say.
That's great. So CORFAC has asked me to note a couple of things. We have the members town hall, I guess it's tomorrow, Wednesday, March 24th. The closing keynote speaker, Anita Kramer, will discuss Urban Land Institute and Pricewaterhouse's emerging trends in real estate on Thursday, March 25th. All sessions are free and begin at 11 a.m. Central Time, and all of CORFAC's spring conference sessions will be available on demand after the event. It was good seeing everybody. I look forward to the time that we can see each other in person, and thank you very much. We really appreciate it. Have a good day.
Great job, Howard. Thank you.
Thank you.
Be well, everyone.
Go get some exclusives. We need them to live.
Absolutely.
You got it.
Have a great day.
Okay.